On this week's episode of the Crowdfunding Nerds, we discuss overcoming backer objections in 2025. We review a video by Room and Board, Chris George, where we discuss the effect of stretch goals, gameplay exclusives, diminishing trust in independent publishers, shipping prices, and more. Let's get into it. Hey folks, this episode is brought to you by Hero Time Manufacturing. That is Hero Time, the numeral1.com. Coach Gleck has been a regular on our podcast. We highly recommend his services. He is a man of integrity. Hero Time, they can make anything. They've got competitive pricing and they even do game prototypes. So make sure to check out Hero Time, numeral1.com. A link is in the show notes. And if you use the code Crowdfunding Nerds 101, you can get a 3% discount on your production through them. Let's get back into the episode.
Game begin.
Let's go.
Bring your pretty face to my ad.
Amazing.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lone, and I am joined as always by Sean. And today on this episode, we're going to talk about crowdfunding objections in 2025. I guess just the overall landscape of crowdfunding has morphed from what it used to be. And if you want to be successful here, you have to adapt as well. So we actively manage how many projects do we manage, Sean, on like a day-to-day basis? Like 60 in various forms?
Yeah, I'd say about 60.
So we're like hands-on, running the ads, running live campaign ads, consulting, sending emails, doing all this stuff. And we learn quite a lot from doing this. And of course, the whole purpose of this podcast is to share that information with you so that you can do a better job on your campaign. Or maybe if you decide that it's terrible, you could just hire us. But there are some common threads that we find in, just related to backer objections and that kind of thing. But I guess before, maybe Sean, to introduce us, what kind of prompted this discussion? Maybe you want to start there.
So Chris George of Room and Board fame, who we actually interviewed on episode 233 of the Crowdfunding Nerds podcast, so make sure to check that out for sort of in-depth discussion with him about rule books. But he's a YouTuber, board game influencer, and he recently produced a video of he titled it The Death of Crowdfunding. So that obviously got my attention, and he explained some of the woes of crowdfunding in 2025. And then what's also quite useful is that the comments sort of also express other reasons. So it's a really great case study of what your potential backers are thinking when they are first looking at your crowdfunding project. So we figured it would be good to summarize his points, but then also review the comments and answer those objections and then equip you so that you will be in a better position to overcome those objections from your potential backers. So we'll include a link in the show notes to the original video, and I would highly recommend that you still go and watch that. But we just really wanted to use this as a launch pad in order to discuss this really important topic that you really need to think about. And actually, it reminds me of the Art of War of Sun Tzu, right? This is the quote. It says, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. So I suppose just replace enemy with your your potential backer. Yeah. But the idea is that you need to understand what your product is, what it does, and then what your customer, in this case the enemy, is thinking and how they're going to react to that. And if you can master those two things, well, then you will be in a better position to achieve your goals.
I guess the battle is over attention nowadays and interest. And maybe if I were to call it, the enemy would be competing campaigns and other things like that. So if you want to win a battle of the battle for attention over a particular backer, that's it. You absolutely need to leverage to the maximum the things that will help you win, right? And I think that there's this sentiment that I've been encountering. It's kind of always been around. I think I first saw it during Gloomhaven's very first campaign, where they were like, So Isaac Childers just said, I'm not going to play the game of Kickstarter. I'm just going to make a really great product and give people the ability to get it. There weren't any stretch goals. There, nothing like that. And I could be, maybe the first edition Gloomhaven campaign had stretch goals and the second one didn't, but certainly, that was the first one that I remember. But the game of Kickstarter or GameFound, is, running stretch goals, keeping people excited during the campaign, hyping people up, and making sure that they feel like they're getting maximum value for their investment. Because really, people, and this is one of the negatives I think that is a very common in crowdfunding that you always have to overcome, is like, why would I give you $100 to get a product a year and a half from now? That's something that you always have to, deal with. And it's funny that, to me, it's when I put it that way, it just sounds so crazy. Like, why would crowdfunding ever work? You're going to give money for a product you may never see, or if you do see it, it's going to be, a year and a half down the road, and your future self will get a present. But
Desperation, Andrew. Desperation.
Maybe, I mean, it's like there's really no other way for an indie designer to make an excellent product. And that's something that we just generally have to accept, that there is a very massive market, like a very significantly sized market of people that will back your project in crowdfunding if they're excited by it. And rather than debating why that is, I mean, you could look at Steam is the same thing for video games. It's like you even though indie game developers actually release a game on Steam, oftentimes they'll release a very early version and then modify it, change it, get feedback from players and whatnot, and then release updated versions and really start trying to sell it after a, in essence, from like a demo stage. So there are a lot of different routes. You can even, of course, launch video games on Kickstarter, which we've done many times. But yeah, it's a phenomenon. But I think that today versus 5 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly, but there's a lot more, I guess the audience is a lot more mature than 5 years ago. They're less, what is it called? Like they're not quite as easily swayed as they were 5 years ago. They're more educated. They know what to look for. And that is really where the video, Chris, in his video, he's a highly educated backer, and he's basically, expressing the woes of new creators making things, or very like highly seasoned creators kind of taking advantage of crowdfunding and making things that may not hold up their value, or may just kind of be gamifying the system too much, and that kind of. So there's this pushback that's happening against gamifying the system, and in essence, what it comes down to at the end of the day is that creators sometimes deliver a product that is not that was overhyped and overvalued, but when you finally receive the product, is less than you hoped it would be. And that, I think, is a common sentiment amongst crowdfunding users, and it's something that you really need to, like, this is like the basis of all like educated crowdfunding users' objections when they look at your page. So when they look at your page, they need to see everything. You've got all your ducks in a row. The value is good. The offer is great. The game looks fantastic, and so on, in order to kind of trust you. But that is a very kind of nuanced, complicated thing. And I think a lot of people just really legitimately want to release the best version of the product that they have, and not worry about all the games, and just take all the hype train and smoke and mirrors away. And I think, bottom line, I think that that's a mistake. for if you want to do crowdfunding right in most cases. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Sean?
Hey, crowdfunding nerds, if you're looking for an awesome fulfillment partner for US shipping, you should really consider Bridge Distribution and Fulfillment. I personally use them. I've used them for multiple projects. They do such a great job. They also can fulfill Amazon orders and get you prepped for Amazon and their warehousing team. I have been so happy using Bridge Distribution. I'm really proud that they're sponsoring us. If you reach out, bridgedist.com, that's bridgedist.com, let them know we sent you. All right, now back to the show.
Yeah, one thing Chris laments is the fact that stretch goals used to be part of the experience of backing projects. And this kind of added to the enjoyment of backing projects on Kickstarter, because there was this motivation to come back. And most publishers now, as you've correctly stated, are electing for the option of just including everything up front. And there's a reason for this, is that because the first 48 hours are so crucial and there's so many projects launching, there's so much competition, you really want to put the best offer forward as possible. Example of this, I think, is the Tekken board game that's currently on GameFound. They elected to drip out the roster of characters in through stretch goals, and I can understand why I actually probably prefer just to see all the characters available from the get-go, because Tekken's so much dependent on the characters, and if you're a particular character you play as and Tekken isn't in the game, well, I'm not backing, because I only play these 3 characters, and if it's not in the game, well then that's the sentiment that a lot of people have now. I think that's important to keep in mind, is that stretch goals, it's like a two-edged sword. Yes, they can help engage the community, but the disadvantage is that it can make your offer look weaker on the first 48 hours of launch. So I would probably recommend, if you're new to crowdfunding, to only do stretch goals if you are 2 or 3 projects in. I think if you're first starting off, keep your offer simple. And I don't know if stretch goal, I think you really want to make that offer as clear as possible and make it orderly as possible.
Yeah, where I guess I differ a little bit on this one for myself. I think stretch goals are an extremely important part of what it is you're doing. However, I believe, like going back to Tekken, I can't imagine that they released this without King, for example. King is one of the most iconic characters of that game. I believe he is featured prominently. I'm just trying to remember what Tekken looked like, but I believe he's featured prominently in the, like down below is his miniature and everything like that. But there are so many other characters that are really memorable. And I think that to have only 4 miniatures or whatever, I mean, in fact, I think Chris, one of the things he was saying is like some of these companies that are well known, they release miniatures heavy games with like 4 to 8 miniatures unlocked, and that that within 2, 3, 4 days you're gonna have 20 more unlocked via stretch goals. And that is, it's so like if the funding goal is like $100,000, but they need to make at least $1 million in order to break even and actually produce the product. But these companies are well known, they have large followings, and they expect that they'll get there. And for big IPs and large audiences that they have, they're the people that back their projects, those companies expect to be successful and reach those goals. And that's kind of a game, like a mini game in a way, with their backers, the people that know these companies like Simon and Go On Board and Awaken Realms. Like, that when you back a miniatures game from one of those companies, you're going to get a ton of extra minis via stretch goals. What they used to do in Zombicide, like you would have all of these, or like Marvel Deceased, or all the various versions of Zombicide that Simon used to make. You would have new characters that may or may not, it may or may not be an IP, but the characters are like just direct, like every character is additional replayability, additional play styles, and that kind of thing. And you want those things. But then after all is said and done, you see you paid like $400 for all of this extra stuff, all these expansions and whatever. And then there are a lot of people that have over the years seen these games hit store shelves, and the base game is like $75. You're like, wait, I paid $400 for mine, and they do these calculations of like, well, what extra did I actually get? And they're like, dude, I have a bunch of characters that I have, there's no way I'll be able to play all these. And then on the opposite side of the coin, you have people that see a game, they're like, well, I could only afford $75 to $100 to back something for 75 to 100, but I'm gonna miss out on all the content because I can't afford the rest, and it's going to be super duper highly priced later in the aftermarket. And so I'm just not going to back this one, because if I can't have everything, I don't want to jump in. And so there's this, it's like a paradox of if you just, certain campaigns, if you just didn't back them, they would come to retail and be cheaper, and then other campaigns, if you don't back right now, then you're going to miss all of the essential exclusive things that would make the experience delightful. And I think that there are two extremes that on a continuum, and I think a reasonable strategy is in the middle. I don't think that you should throw out stretch goals. I think that you need to use stretch goals just like you would use any game mechanic. It needs to support the core experience that you're trying to provide in the actual game itself, or you need to change the mechanic or cut it entirely. In the same way, marketing is meant to help people understand what your product is. Like, bottom line, at the end of the day, you're just trying to help people understand what your product is so that they can know if they want it or not. And part of that is getting them excited about what your thing is. But even before that, it's just being honest about what your product is. It's like, my game Deliverance is a kind of a tactical skirmish game. If you don't like those and you only ever play Euros, or you hate cooperative games, it's immediately something that doesn't, like, the rest of it doesn't matter. I could tell you how amazing the character development is. I could tell you how incredible the theme is and whatever. But if you're not a fan of cooperative games, then the reality is that it's not just me wasting my breath, it's me wasting your time. You want to figure out what it is, and to know that it's either something that might be for you or is not for you, and then you want to move on. So an honest approach to marketing, that's the core goal. It's like, you want people that are excited about your product because they just generally find that it's interesting and compelling to them and relevant to their interests, and it's something that they think they might actually want to play. You can hype people, like, for example, like, I'm not a huge fan of like Marvel games. I'll play them and everything, of course, but not a huge fan of the IP. Just, it's not that I don't like it. I have Marvel Champions. I've got other Marvel games on my shelf, but it's not something that's like super duper appealing to me. But what is appealing to me would be like in Marvel Champions, deck building, and the fact that the Lord of the Rings LCG, that is like an older version of Marvel Champions, and Marvel Champions kind of really made that system better. And that's what excited me about it. So it wasn't it's not the hype train of oh, it's Marvel, but it's the actual mechanics that are relevant to my interests. And so in stretch goals, they need to be relevant to your audience's interests, but with the one caveat of, you can't just go off the rails out of control. I feel like every stretch goal needs to be a tested piece of content that adds value to the core of the game, without, like, your if you were to cut all the stretch goals out, your offer would not be watered down. Or maybe with like what we did in our first Deliverance campaign, I did cut out characters from my first Deliverance campaign, and I did unlock them with monetary stretch goals. And we managed to unlock all of them. I think I had 5 in the game, and then an additional 4 that were unlocked via stretch goals, that were huge content additions to the game. And then when I did the expansion, we included all the characters by default. It just, I didn't want to play that that it felt like wrong to play the game like that. It was I just wanted to show people the value that they're going to get is what they see on day one. The value is there, and what I decided to do instead, which I think is really smart, is I did weekly unlocks. So I'm like, we've got 9 characters. I'm showing you 5, and then there are going to be 4 unlocks, like one every single week, to show you the next one that you've already got. It has nothing to do with stretch goals or how much money we raise or whatever. It's just I'm going to show you what this is, and we're all going to be excited about it. And that was a huge win for my audience. They were coming back certainly every single week. It was a very, very exciting time. Thursdays were really exciting for my audience because they got to see the new thing that they all unlocked. It had nothing to do with the amount of money we raised. It only had to do with, like, these from day one are in the game, but I'm not telling you what they are yet. We're going to see what they are during the campaign. And that was a very exciting thing for everybody. And it felt honest to me. It's like, this is what you're getting in here. And we also had a bunch of other actual stretch goals that were monetary that felt a little bit like a game, where you had certain things like linen finish on the cards and cardboard. Like, is there really a world in which I make an expansion that where the card stock does not match the base game? And the answer is no way. However, if we didn't make enough money, then that is a legitimate concern. Like, I really, if I had to make 75,000, if I didn't make 75, there's no way in heck I could have made. Yeah, I would have had to cut every single, if I barely made that money, I would have had to cut every single thing I possibly could. And that's just the nature of crowdfunding. So as long as you can explain that to your backers and it doesn't feel dirty and icky, then I think it's fine. And if you can reason it out to your backers, they'll understand. And so every stretch goal needs to be supplemental to the campaign. We had with lots of extra cards. We had lots of extra various upgrades to qualities of components and whatnot. But yeah, it feels like major content additions, they all need to be tested. Like, if I was like, I'm making a new character and here's the art, but I haven't even designed the character, I haven't even tested it. That type of that sort of content to a very experienced crowdfunder, they will say this will be unrefined, and the quality of that character will not match the quality of all of these others that have been tested and play tested a bunch. So, the experienced person is like, I'm not excited about that. Even worse if it's an add-on that costs $10,
Well, I think when it comes to stretch goals, the key is clarity as well. Something to keep in mind. I think every pledge level needs to be very clear why it's more and what you're getting that separates it from the other one. And keeping that as simple as possible and as easy to comprehend is super key. I think one of the reasons I don't like stretch goals too much is because it can muddy that perception of, well, what's the actual difference between these levels. So yeah, I think there is a way you can do stretch goals, but there's also another way where it can start muddying the waters in terms of the clarity of your actual pledges. And I think we've seen projects that have done stretch goals and haven't done stretch goals and have been successful. So I think what's more important is how you're managing your community, and are you providing incentives, as you've said, to keep them engaged. I think you can still, like what you did with daily unlocks, I think that's something that's very reasonable to do and kind of fills the need for stretch goals. Because another reason why the stretch goals are important is that you're highlighting a key element of your game, which is exciting people to either increase their pledge or to tell their friends or to actually back the project itself. So they might be on the fence and, oh yeah, that stretch goal and this particular highlight you did of this character, for example, is the thing that actually pushes them over the edge. But going back to some of the objections that Chris brings up in this video, and you're absolutely right. One of them is the idea of gameplay exclusives, which can become unattractive. He mentions in his video that every gameplay exclusive that he actually purchased and played didn't make the game meaningfully better. It just was a gimmick, really. It was just this kind of FOMO to get people to do something. And he sort of moves away, personally himself, he moves away from any type of gameplay exclusives. And this is something that we've noticed ourselves just with surveying backers. Gameplay exclusives are very unpopular, something that's very unattractive. So I would never recommend you do some type of Kickstarter gameplay exclusive within your offer.
Yeah, the gameplay exclusive is part of the game of like early birds and like, why back now? What you're trying to do is you're trying to answer the question, why back now? The more compelling answer you can give to that question, like why should I as a backer back your project now rather than wait for retail later? The more compelling of an answer you can give, the more of those people you're gonna convince. And some of them are convinced by a lower price. Some of them are convinced by getting it first. Some of them are convinced by, you saying it's not going to retail. There's no guarantee of that. This is your only chance to get it. And others are not. And so maybe, you need to give people people, this is where Kickstarter exclusive or GameFound exclusive has come from, where you're like, I will give you a miniature and a character for free if you follow, or for free if you back in the first 48 hours, or if you back this campaign. I even did this, I have this cool little like experience tracker, which is so it's like a little test piece for people watching on video that I gave for free to all. It's like a 2-piece metal coin or like metal token set that interlock. Everybody that backed the campaign gets that for free, but after the campaign, you can purchase it for $5. But it's not something that actually is gameplay. It's just a cosmetic upgrade. And I think that there's a huge difference between gameplay exclusives and things that are cosmetic. I also think that there's a huge difference when you're talking about, for example, something that you get for free for backing me now, which is really meaningful. Like, I want people to back me now. If you support me now versus later, it's going to make a bigger difference, because that means I'm going to be able to actually make this and deliver it. I'll be able to make more. I'll be able to get better prices because of economies of scale. And I need to appreciate you for backing a project that's not going to be there for a long time. So, when I'm looking at all of this stuff, if I went to retail with that metal coin or that 2-piece metal token set, it would increase the cost of the game. But because I'm able to, get this thing made for roughly $300 in mold fees, and then like 40 cents as far as like per unit, that, or maybe it's a little less, but that's the actual manufactured cost of this item. It would increase the cost of the game by like over $2, like probably $2.50, if I put that component into the box for the quote unquote retail edition. But on Kickstarter, people are buying direct. It's like I don't need to increase that cost, or that cost by like 5, in order to make it worthwhile. That's just saying thank you. Hey, we made $500,000. I can make this thing and give it to everyone and say thank you. Sure, I take a $5,000 loss or whatever for creating this, but the value and the goodwill that it created was just really incredible. And it's also a reason to like, why back now? It's like, I'm gonna get this game, but why should I back today? Why should I tie up my funds today? It's like, well, there's this little extra thing you can get. So I think that there's value in doing that.
Yeah, so I think the kind of key focus there is that that's a quality of life improvement, not a gameplay improvement. So I think, yeah, you want to avoid any type of thing which impacts the game itself, but certainly have exclusives for Kickstarter or GameFound which improves the quality of components. So this could be your metal coins or your gloss finish or your foil cards or whatever that may be. That is very important, I think, in the Kickstarter. In fact, this is actually one of the things that Chris in his video kind of concludes with, is that one of the reasons, some of the things he's looking for is titles which kind of fill that, they scratch the all-in pledge, where I want this is a really interesting project, an idea, and I want to sink my teeth into it. I want this to become my next lifestyle game. So I want all the things. And this is, I think, very important moving forward for Kickstarters, is that your game does become that lifestyle game for people where they get all the things because they want the best quality component because they're just so invested in the idea and the game itself that they're going to play this for the next 6 months, that they're going to get all the things and really enjoy the entire process of following it along and waiting for it to come and playing it and experiencing all that the game has to offer. So I think gameplay exclusives avoid, component quality of life improvements 100% include, and be very strategic in how you place those in your pledge levels to make the all-in pledges as attractive as possible.
Yeah, I also think that not every game is a lifestyle game, right? And that's I look at Deliverance as a very large game that you would play. You know, most games, by the way, backing up just a second, most games on somebody's shelf, they're going to play like twice. If you play it once, then you've learned the rules and you kind of bumbled through your first game. Maybe you got through half of the game and you're like, okay, now I understand it, and we'll get back to this. And if you play it again, that's actually a win for the publisher, because most games, I've heard this, and I don't know exactly how true this is, are played an average of like 1.5 times. If you look at every single game that you have on your shelf, those games are played each an average, using not the median, but the mean or mode anyway. They're not played that much. So while, Lord of the Rings Journeys of Middle Earth, I've played over 100 times with my wife, or whatever. I mean, I can see games on my shelf that I have still in the shrink wrap or, that I've opened up and looked at the components, but not actually played. In fact, there's this game right here on video. It's called Crusaders, Thy Will Be Done, by Seth Jaffe, I think, and it was Tasty Minstrel Games. That's a Kickstarter edition of that product, and I was very excited. I'm still actually excited about it. I've never played it. I opened the game and looked at the components, and my wife is like, we had other things we wanted to play at the time, and it's like, okay, this is like in line to get played. I read the rule book and everything like that. Never got it to the table, and it's like, I don't know, like 7 years ago or something, I got that. So it's been opened, and I've looked at it and I'm like, I'd really like to try to play this one day. But that's just the reality. There are so many other things that I want to play, and oftentimes as a backer, my eyes are larger than my stomach. So my capacity to play is less than what I think it's going to be. But every single time I look at that game, it makes me happy. It's like one day, that's a gem that'll come off my shelf
when the kids grow up.
Yeah.
So another thing that is mentioned is the diminishing trust in independent publishers delivering on their promises. I think a lot of people recognize that there's a lot of publishers, especially first-time publishers, are doing everything themselves, and because they're doing everything themselves, they're inexperienced, and there's a lot that can go wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are becoming aware of this. So I suppose the objection to overcome is, how can you demonstrate that you've kind of dotted your I's and crossed your T's? And I think you do this by really flexing your partners. For example, if you signed up with us, you can say, Crowdfunding Nerds have worked very closely with me and have, reviewed my manufacturing and these types of things. And they've partnered me with some of the best people in the industry, and I'm in capable hands. So things like using that kind of language of messaging in your email communication, I think it's very important. If you are a first-time creator and you might be feeling a bit apprehensive of it all, there's plenty of people in the industry who you can partner with, and who can you can tap into their network and vast experience in the industry. So I think this is something that you can easily overcome. So I don't think it's too much of a problem, but it is something to be aware of, that this is something in the back of people's minds. Can you actually deliver this? Do you even know how Kickstarter works? Are you able, is this too good to be true, so to speak? So yep, it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah. In fact, that even comes out. So when everybody listening to this is some version of a creator and not necessarily a lay person that backs games for the express purpose of enjoying the product, we actually are not allowed to play games as publishers. We're only allowed to play test them. So anything that I play, I'm looking at the mechanics. I'm like, this is interesting how they blended these two mechanics or whatever. And the regular player is like, I think Terraforming Mars is fun. It's like, I like collecting the blue cards or whatever. It's like they don't think the same way. So when you as a publisher are kind of thinking, well, what would matter to me? Sometimes you can miss really easy things like this. So you've got, and I think this is a really good point where people will ask, rightly so, are you capable of delivering? And the simplest way to say yes I am is to say, I did one project, I delivered it already, and I delivered it on time or on budget or whatever. Or for me, I delivered my first project. It came later than I planned, and I certainly learned a lot from that. I moved across the country. I had another kid. It was a complicated process. But the game was incredible. It was worth the wait. So, my whole thing was like, I'm going to make sure that the game is great. Like, no matter how long it takes to deliver, the gameplay, when you receive this, it's going to blow your mind, and for my audience, it really did. And so I was able to say the next time, I'm going to continue to take the same level of care and blah, blah, blah. But if you're a first-time creator, you can't say stuff like that because you haven't delivered, right? So you can't take the good stuff that you managed to do the first time around. So how do you do it? It's exactly what you said, Sean. You need to get to let people know that you are working with experienced and seasoned partners that have done this many times before. So you've got your logistics person, like you're working with Konstantinos over at Hive to make sure that you are able to deliver to every region in a region friendly manner, so that somebody backing from Europe is going to get the game at a reasonable shipping cost. Or you're working with Crowdfunding Nerds and you've done they are helping you with your manufacturing and shipping and logistics, so that you're not going to make critical mistakes. Or your designer has worked on other types of games and all of that. So you can say, like, with manufacturers, that's a really like undervalued partner. You've got your awesome manufacturer like Hero Time Manufacturing or whatever. These people have created a ton of different products that you can show that have made it to shelves that are and they have experience getting products to the US, working with customers. They the just the overall experience is something that you might not have, but if your partner does, then you can claim it as well. These are your mentors and your guides, and you should absolutely leverage those connections.
I think another thing is that people need to look at your page and they need to see that you've taken this seriously. That's going to inspire confidence. The art is well thought out and the page is well laid out. And this is actually where I think we're going to start running into issues on Kickstarter and GameFound, is as we see the increase fidelity, I suppose, of AI and how well it is able to sort of adapt to realism. One of the kind of hallmarks of people who took themselves seriously is the art was good and the page layout was, and there was a lot of confidence just in how it was presented. But now with AI, that could be fabricated. And I think people can be hoodwinked by the fact that a page might look very professional. And as it becomes harder to discern between real artists and AI, I think we're going to have a lot of scams, frankly, within these platforms where you won't be able to trust if a page looks good. So it's going to be other things that you're going to have to be.
I'm already there with like Facebook ads. Like, have you ever seen Facebook ads for cool games that show cards or characters or whatever? It's like cool board games that I always wonder. First thought immediately, if the art style doesn't look exactly the same, I'm wondering, like, was that done by Midjourney?
Yeah, as AI. So I think the thing which will make your project stand out and to build confidence is that community building. That's something that AI can't replace. It's going to be maybe your vlogs or your email communications with the odd typo. It kind of shows that you're a human. But having that kind of personal connection, or maybe even engaging on social media, with folks, all of that, I think, is going to inspire confidence in a way that maybe the page itself will cease to do. But just, I think for the time being, having a page that's well laid out, the art being professional, all these things sort of show that you take this seriously, and that's also going to sort of inspire confidence in your ability to deliver.
Yeah. Also, along those lines, 3 things that people miss. When you miss any one of these 3 things, you will make less money. The first one is a playthrough video. The next one is a how to play video. And the third one is one review from a reputable channel that people can say, oh, yes, this is a channel I know. And what that last one's like, the Dice Tower or Quackalope or I don't know, Board Game Co. or Room and Board or a million different channels, something that has like 10,000 or more subscribers that is known. Man versus Meeple, I want to say One Stop Co-op Shop, Man versus Meeple, and Board Game Co. were 3 that I used with my projects, but you just need one. And people may not even, and I do this myself, I may not even watch that video, but the mere fact that you have it tells me that you're not embarrassed of your product. You're willing to share it publicly with someone who has a critical eye, and they have covered the product. And it's not, it doesn't say like, oh, every box is checked, but it definitely is a positive sign that is very easy to see that I look for. If there's no gameplay video, this is so common. People are like, they make the most beautiful page and everything is like so well done, and the art and this and that, and they don't have any video of their gameplay. So what in the world are you doing? This is a game. You want to demonstrate it? Play it for me. Show me that it works.
I recently have an example of this, that one of our clients did a phenomenal job with a gameplay video, and it's low budget, so there's a bit of amateurness, but the way it was done, it was quite good. Project called Regulus, and he had a gameplay video, and it was just him and his girlfriend playing the game, and he had a multi-camera shoot, so he must have had a webcam or something, but he was able to, and he had zoom ins. So look at that as an example, because I think that's a very, very good example of a gameplay video done on a budget, but if anyone can really do it. So just in terms of a case study, a Regulus gameplay, if it's on GameFound, you easily find the gameplay video, but we'll include it in the show notes as well. I think that was a phenomenal example of a low budget kind of playthrough. If you don't have the kind of money to send it off to a professional to do it, you can certainly ad hoc it.
Yep. Yeah. What do you think about kind of going back to the idea of this lifestyle game? Not every crowdfunding project can be a lifestyle game, and in my opinion, not every crowdfunding project should try to be a lifestyle game. If you have like a $30 or $40 game that is about taking your cat to the vet, which was one that a friend of mine did, that is not a lifestyle game that I'm going to play 100 times. I might play it once or twice myself, and then bring it out with the reason I would buy something like that is because I want to bring it out for the people that come over to my house that have cats and love cats. It's like, that's a big reason that the theme really matters in with crowdfunding. But it's like, can I see myself playing this? That is kind of the quote unquote lifestyle game. It's like, do I see myself investing a lot of time into this? For me, that one is Isofarian Guard or Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era. These are like $400 monsters or $250 monsters of a product. Or Ascendancy is a big one that we did. Gosh, there's some good ones. Algomancy is cool, even though that one's not quite as expensive. But they're like really, really big ones. And then there are like the smaller ones that are more theme-based, like viticulture. Maybe I want a game like that on my shelf for people that I know are like wine aficionados. When they come over, then we can actually play something with a theme that makes them care about the product and enjoy their experience a little bit more. I might take it out once every 2 years when those people come over, but we're going to have more fun, at least perceived, and so the theme can really matter. And the reason that I would buy this, maybe I get it as a gift for a friend or something. It's so niche, but like I want to say there are these games that it's been a while since I've seen one, but they're like science based games that are like really about, like a game called Covalence, which is about building atoms. It's like protons, neutrons, and electrons, and charging your ions, and positive and negative charges and stuff. It's like such a nerdy science game, and it's perfect if you have a friend who is a scientist, or in that's into that kind of stuff. But it's like so niche, but that's a reason that somebody would back your game, and where it doesn't need to be a lifestyle game. The thing that I don't quite understand is where you're making something that sounds fun that it doesn't really need to exist. I don't know. I feel like it's hard to explain it differently than that, but like if something if it has to exist, if I'm making a thing and it must exist, not just because I'm making it and I want it to exist. I mean, that's not a bad reason, but if I feel like nothing like it exists in the market and it deserves to exist, that's to me the very core building block of why you would go to crowdfunding, why you would even take a project beyond, an idea in your mind, is like this. I feel like this has to exist. And, maybe you get it down on paper and you fiddle with it a little bit, but like, why spend all the effort to bring it from idea to like printed reality if it doesn't really need to exist? If some other game is out there that does what your game does but better, I think that people really, maybe that's one of my complaints, is like people really need to understand what else is out there. And it doesn't, I regularly talk to people every once in a while that aren't really gamers, but they made a game, or their friend made a game, but they're like the businessy type people, so they are so excited about the product, but they don't really know what other, they don't know how to talk about it. They just explain like, oh, this is the best game with the best mechanics, and like well, I don't even know what type of game it is based on your explanation, but they think that that's a great explanation because it is to them, but it just shows like inexperience. So that's some very commonly, like when we have clients that come to us with a product like that, which I had this last week actually, the very first thing I tell them is, if you can't explain to me what makes your game unique and interesting in like one sentence, then you have work to do. You need to figure out like why other people like this, in addition to why you think it is awesome, why you think it deserves to exist. What do other people like best about it? And saying other people like it isn't enough. It's like, what specifically did they like about that experience that they had?
So the final thing that is mentioned in terms of objections to overcome in 2025 for backers is rising shipping costs. So it's just, shipping isn't going down. It seems to be going eternally up. And it seems like all these games are really just designed to make the shipmasters wealthy. But that's something to factor in. Shipping is getting more expensive, and therefore games are becoming more expensive. And the kind of deal of Kickstarter is therefore being impacted. So it's something to navigate. I think a lot of people's objections now is, wait till retail, get it cheaper. So you really have to carve out something very unique and very special for people to jump in right now and back your crowdfunding game. So I think the ability to do your research and development and figure out something that's unique in the market is more important now than ever if you're going to invest all this time and money. So yes, you have to have the passion and the drive, but I also think you need to have the kind of analytics to kind of justify the investment of your time and money. If your goal is to make this commercially viable, if your goal is just to get a passion project out because you really want this idea to exist, then by all means pursue that. But if your goal is to build a business and to make something commercially successful so that you can build upon that success, then I do think an element of kind of doing your analysis and figuring out what's in the market, where is their missing hole. And actually a great place to do this is even on Steam. because Steam, you can see the best selling games based on categories. So you can see what types of games, what kind of themes are popular in video games that might have some correlation to the tabletop industry. So that might be a good place to do some research currently.
Absolutely. I have you ever seen the it's a video of somebody pulling a sheep out of a crevasse in the ground. And it's some, I don't know, maybe it's like in Northern Ireland in your backyard or something, but there's this like fissure in the ground that's like a foot wide, and someone's sheep has fallen into it, and they, if somebody goes and like pulls it out by the legs and gets it out, and it runs away, and it jumps right and falls right back into the crevasse again, it like a little further down the road. Is that familiar to you? Okay, so that is what creators do with shipping. They're like, all right, I figured out all my manufacturing and everything, and I feel like I'm confident and I'm good. And you get pulled out of the miry clay by or the crevasse by your partners, like the Crowdfunding Nerds. We're going to tell you if something's wrong with your Kickstarter page before you launch, so that you don't capsize when you launch or reach, in fact, we actually have this what we call our hygiene test. It's where we look at your page, make sure that you have all of the essential items that backers are looking for, make sure you've addressed each thing, make sure, et cetera, that people know how the game plays and that you have no typos, et cetera. But then a lot of the time we'll have people say, I'll ask, where's your shipping chart? They'll be like, shipping chart goes here in the Kickstarter page, and I don't see the numbers. Like, oh yeah, we're getting our numbers, we're putting them together and everything like that. And if I miss the shipping chart, it's sometimes hard to remember to follow up and be like, I need to see those numbers to make sure you don't launch and mess this up. But the easiest way to really mess it up again is to charge $30 shipping for your $50 game. It's the fastest way to just, you're like, I just launched my campaign, and then you fall right back into the crack again, and you look like, a dumb sheep. It's because that shipping calculation matters quite a lot. And I think that a lot of people don't everybody understands, nobody likes to pay for shipping. I would rather pay for an $80 product and free shipping than a $50 product with $30 shipping. It's literally the same price. However, it's a much different value. I'm getting $80 worth of stuff, and I'm not having to throw away anything on shipping. Of course, the cost of shipping is buried in the product. So, and I don't recommend free shipping, by the way. I do recommend charging for shipping, but I find that shipping, it scales. The value people will place into shipping scales at a rate based on like the size of the product, the expense, or the value of the product. So if you have a $50 product, you can't charge $30 for shipping. You need to be able to say, like, it's a $60 product and you're going to charge $20 for shipping. The ratio looks better. I polled my Deliverance community. It was we had an expansion coming. There was an $80 ask, and the community, and I figured out I could charge as little as $10 for shipping in the Pledge Manager, and that I could deliver. I could subsidize up to, it was like $24 in shipping is what it would take to deliver a package like that in the US. And so I could absorb $14 of that in the $80 price point of our game. And so, that's I could charge $10 shipping. But I polled my audience, and they said that they would be willing to pay up to $15 before they start. And I gave them the prices. I'm like, hey, this is an $80 product. What would you be willing to pay as far as shipping? And it gave them options to choose. And the vast majority said, in the US said, if it's over $15, then I'll be a little hesitant. And so I upped our shipping to 15 that people would pay, which allows me much more wiggle room. In fact, that is how we cover our tariffs, because I was able to charge $15 to the US instead of 10, because the tariffs up 30% right now. We'll see what they are in the future when we actually manufacture, ship, deliver, but that was a major help to our tariff costs, and backers were willing to pay it. So I could have cut my cost to the bone, charged $10 shipping, and in essence, lost $5 a backer. But instead, I was able to charge 15 because I polled my audience, found that was an acceptable number to them. And so I would recommend to you guys, $15 to the US. If you have an expensive product, you can bury some of that cost. Rather, the right word is subsidize. You can subsidize the shipping in the cost of your product, because your product, I don't know, let's say it's $50. It might cost you, let's just say $10 to make, and maybe like a total of $15 to land that product in the US and put it into your warehouse. That means you have $35 worth of margin that you will make into your pocket, that can be used to pay for things like art and like logistics, and pay for your staff or your own salary or whatever it is, your marketing expense and whatnot. And because on Kickstarter, you're going to make 100%, direct from your customer, minus whatever it is that it costs you to land, landed cost. There is enough margin in your product to actually reduce to subsidize shipping. That will start to handle the objection of, why don't I just wait till retail? It's going to be cheaper there. It's like, if you can make those numbers look really close, then it's not going to be something that hinders you anymore. And that's the way that we overcame that objection of well, what if I just wait till retail, or what if I just wait till later? I'm not going to have to pay as much. And actually, for us, the price of our product is going to go up later. And yeah, you may still have to pay $10 or $15 shipping later, but the value is that you will actually end up either breaking even or saving a little bit of money, because we were able to subsidize the shipping in the price of our product. So something that's not done nearly enough, but I think is super valuable. And you can tell people about it too. You can say, we are subsidizing between $9 and $16 of your shipping in the price of our product. So, you're going to get, like, whatever the actual shipping rate is, you're going to, we are covering a portion of this. So, and people appreciate that, even though it's, so anyway, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, another thing to think about is VAT. So as you said, no one likes to pay for shipping. No one likes to pay for tax. And I hate these kind of websites where oh, this looks great. You add it to the checkout, and at the end they add VAT to it. That's something you often see here in Europe, and that's very infuriating. It's like, oh, you just give me the price up front. You just assume that's part of the price. So that's another thing to keep in mind, where EU backers will be adding 21 to 25% on top of whatever your shipping and pledge is altogether, because they have to pay VAT, and that's something that could put off a lot of European backers if those numbers don't look attractive to them as well. So keep that in mind. The European backers will be adding VAT in their mind to that. It's also very important to say on the page, VAT isn't included in these estimates for people, so that they understand that, because it might not be apparent to first-time backers in Europe that VAT is not included in those kind of estimates that you're presenting there.
Yep. I think it's important to be straightforward and open with your prices and whatnot. I would say that there's also a sentiment, especially with first-time creators, that is dangerous, which is that they're going to just charge just enough, and maybe they'll take a loss on the first project, but they feel like if they build trust and they build credibility by delivering on time, they can take a loss on their first project. And I would caution against that, because you need money in order to develop your second project. What if your second project isn't as successful as you hope it will be? I mean, it would have been better to make money on the first project, right? And so you don't have to take a huge loss on the first project in order, or even a small loss on the first project. You should aim every single project. You should aim to make money with every single project. You should aim to make more than you invested into it. Or you should aim to make all your money back and whatnot. I think that is an area that is really confusing to a lot of non-Europeans, because, you know, like me as an American trying to get products into Europe, it can be very expensive and time consuming and confusing and whatnot. So I have to use a third party. Thank goodness, actually, we use Hive. Hive is not only a pledge manager, it's actually a they can like they're like VAT representatives, so they can help you with this. They can even consolidate shipping and whatnot. It's been a huge lifesaver for me personally on my projects. But you want to make sure that, even though, I'll say it this way, even though, let's say, nobody likes paying tax, you have to make sure that you're not covering the cost for your backers to buy your products. That they should pay that, and there are plenty of people willing to pay. They might less might pay, but I think overall, if they expect to pay for VAT, they might avoid higher priced products overall, but they're not going to overall. Like, I found our first project, we actually paid for VAT. And I felt like it had very little difference on the bottom line for Europeans. We had roughly the same percentage wise people order from Europe this round that they did in our first campaign. And I made it very clear in the first campaign that we had covered the cost of VAT in the pledge. And the second campaign was, you're going to have to pay VAT in the pledge manager. And so just something to think about. But you definitely want to make sure that you're not setting yourself up for failure by being willing to take a loss on your first project. So I guess just something to keep in mind.
So I suppose in order to round up, we have covered several points. So the one is stretch goals. Make sure you've thought that through very clearly. Also think about how stretch goals could potentially muddy your offer. You want to make sure that your pledges are very attractive and that they're very clear, and that one of the huge appeals of stretch goals is this kind of community that you're building around your project and the need to come back and experience the crowdfunding event. Gameplay exclusives are a big no-no. However, certainly consider quality of life improvements and upgrades in your Kickstarter or your GameFound campaign. Making those exclusive is totally fine. Understand that as a first-time creator, there's the mistrust. A lot of people might not expect you to deliver, and that might be something that you will have to overcome. Use your partners in order to remove that objection. Also have a think about how you present your project. If you are clearly taking yourself seriously, then other people will take you seriously. And then shipping prices, you want to make sure that you've kind of squared those away and you've kind of, you're not charging, you're kind of supplementing the shipping into the pledge itself. And in terms of what people are looking for, they're looking for unique games where they can't find anywhere else. You know, and you kind of, in the beginning of this podcast, you said something to the effect of, you know, why would someone give you all this money to trust with you? And I say desperation. And in a sense, that's true. People they're backing you because they literally cannot find this type of product anywhere else. So there might be the theme is very niche, or the game is a certain size. It's just, it wouldn't work in any other context. So this is the only chance for them to get something like this. So they're desperate so they are going to fork over their $200 or $300, whatever it is, to get all the things. And then finally, making sure that your all-in offer is quite attractive for people, because if people seem to go all in or nothing. So if people are going to go all in, make sure that is appealing for them. There's enough there for them to sink their teeth into, and for it to be the thing that delights them for the next 6 months.
Yeah, it's great advice. And then, of course, you know, shipping prices and VAT and all of that. Just make sure that you've thought through your offer, the total value that you're giving for the total amount of money that you're asking. If I can look at your product and say, yeah, that's a good value for this price, and I do, as a backer, I do the calculation and figure out how much money do I have in my piggy bank, and can I spend this amount on the product, and then I figure out, okay, I have $150 that I can spend on something. From that point forward, it becomes about the value for my money. So when I spend 150, or even, 75 or 25 on a product. I'm looking for the maximum value gained for the money. And part of that equation, of course, is, making sure that the product actually gets delivered. But then the cost of the product, what comes in there, and also, how well you present those things on your Kickstarter or GameFound page. Those things all matter. So hopefully this podcast has been really helpful to you guys. Chris's video with Room and Board is called The Death of Crowdfunding. And I don't think crowdfunding is slowing down at all. It's going to continue to speed up, but the reality is that you have to step up your game if you're going to be successful in 2025 and beyond. And that's what this podcast is here to help you do. So hopefully we got you 1% better by listening to this. And let's have Robot Richard send us on out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.
Hey, Crowdfunding Nerds, it's Andrew Lowen, and I wanted to introduce you guys to the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. If you don't know, we have a do-it-yourself course system that will teach you how to build, excite, and prepare a crowd to fund you on your launch day, and that is our goal. I have used these systems to help raise over $30 million for tabletop campaigns, over 200 tabletop crowdfunding campaigns since 2019. I've generated over $100 million through e-commerce sales using these processes. These courses teach you how to replicate our results. They're made for the small creator. Over 150 of those people were first-time creators. These courses contain hundreds of hours of podcast discussions and tons of details that are almost impossible to find on the internet. And they have been distilled into concentrated courses that you can absorb quickly. They are designed to generate results. We hold nothing back. Visit crowdfundingnerds.com/academy to learn more, or just Google search Crowdfunding Nerds Academy.